Carrie, is there anything that you want to say before we get started? And I just muted you, so you have to unmute yourself. Sorry. Try again. Sorry, I was unmuting you. You're unmuted now.
Okay. I just want to say welcome to everybody. I see we have one school student on from Poplar, so she'll be joining us over the next several series, and hoping to gain more interest from other participants that we have signed up as well. Not everybody does Facebook and not everybody does WebEx, so it's trial and error at this point. But on behalf of Fort Peck Community College, we're excited for this short session opportunity each Friday to get some information out related to various FSA programs and what is out there that applies to each farmer and rancher. So thank you, Liz, for taking the time this morning, and I'll let you take back over.
All right, thanks a lot. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Moment. Let's see. Here we go. And all right. So today this is just going to be a quick overview of what we have planned for this series so far. I know a lot of people aren't joining us live right now, but we will post the video to Facebook through Carrie's Facebook page. So it should be easy to get to later on with that. I'm joined by Wendy Becker, who's the MSU Fort Peck Reservation Extension Agent. I'm Kate Benson Fuller, and I'm working with Carrie and Wendy and Liz work on this project. And we have a whole series planned. We're also very interested in getting input and advice as to what you guys would like to see. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. So today I'm going to be doing a little bit of an ag outlook, as well as talking about the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or cfap. Next week, we've got George Haynes talking about small business COVID-19 stimulus. Following that, we'll have Tommy Bass talking about local beef processing in Montana, which is always a pretty hot topic. Eric Velasco is going to follow that up kind of in the cattle realm, giving a cattle market update, which is super relevant this year since COVID. And then we have Joel doing the latest on the stimulus package for individuals. After that, we're pretty open, so please don't hesitate to get in touch with us to suggest topics, or if you have questions, we would love to hear them. So a little bit of ag economy overview for Montana. So looking at the current year in reference to recent years past, this is just a snapshot of plantings for kind of our major crop systems in terms of acreage. If you look at wheat and barley, those are pretty big acreage crops. Changes don't show up quite as easily. Those markets, or that acreage looks relatively flat in 2020 relative to 2019. If we break wheat into different categories, we're actually looking at a pretty large decline in winter wheat acres this year. We generally do see a lot of moving around between spring and winter wheat acreage. We're certainly seeing that this year. If we look at some of the smaller acreage but still major commodity crops, we can see a lot more volatility over the last 5 years. So that the graph over to the right-hand side is looking at canola, which has been relatively steady since it bumped up over 100,000 acres in 2017. Chickpeas, which we've seen pretty steep declines in acreage since price really fell off a couple years ago. We actually saw a little bit of an increase in lentil acreage this year, and we'll look at prices for that in a second. Dry pea acreage is down slightly, but not a whole lot. Looking at prices, so on the left, we're looking at cattle and wheat prices. So this is where we go to take a pulse of the Montana agricultural economy. These are our two major commodities. Prices for calves and wheat are kind of down right now. We generally see that as we move into the harvest season, um, or the shipping season, just because we see more of those commodities on the market. But we didn't get really as high in either one of those prices as I think we like to, in a good year. Pulses, on the other hand, we're looking at sort of a tighter snapshot. So just looking back to January of 2019, the prices for chickpeas kind of fell off a while ago, and you can't see that so much on this graph. Dry peas have been pretty steady for a long time. We do have some domestic markets for those. The interesting part for me, I think, is in lentils. We saw some real bumps up in those prices. The one in January predated COVID, but then we did see a lot of people with a lot of interest in purchasing a lot of dry beans when COVID hit. And so I think partially because of that, we did see a pretty big spike up in lentil prices. That fell off, I think, as people realized they just don't eat that much dry beans. And now that there are alternatives and people are maybe going out a little bit more to the grocery store, they're not thinking about dry, shelf stable products quite as much. So looking at the ag economy as a whole, we're going to look at sort of two big trends in 2020. And the first one is trade. We have two major trade deals kind of underway. There's this one with China, and that's what the graph on the left is looking at. That's from Bloomberg. And what that is saying is that the trade deal with China, which is not a binding trade deal, I think there's a lot of skepticism moving into that. That skepticism really played out. So, so far we are far behind where we should be if we were to meet the year-to-date targets for that trade deal, and agriculture is included in that. The other big news is that we now have a trade deal with Mexico and Canada again. So this is the USMCA, or US-Mexico-Canada Agreement. That just went into effect July 1, and there are some projections for modest improvements for Montana wheat prices, particularly selling to Canada. There are some better quality designations that we can have now, and possible improvements for malt barley prices in sales to Mexico. So Mexico buys a lot of malt, they brew a lot of beer, so we could see some better prices for that. A little too early to say at this point. The other big trend this year, of course, is COVID, and COVID has hit the agricultural economy pretty hard. For the US, the cattle market has been super volatile. Slaughter has sped up once again, but there have been so many hiccups in that process. I think that is really the market that's relevant to Montana that has been the hardest hit. Corn and soybeans, so not so much of a Montana issue, although I know older in the eastern part of the state, we do actually have some of those crops. But for Midwestern states, that was a really harsh effect. So because of the linkages of those markets to biodiesel and ethanol, which really prices really fell off early in the pandemic as people weren't going anywhere, they were hit really hard. And we've seen some recovery, but still, I think people are very concerned. Certainly the derecho that happened in Iowa, I guess a couple weeks ago now, which was a major storm, did have some impacts on both corn quality as well as storage facilities, and potentially yield, although not having major nationwide effects. Wheat, currently the price forecast is not looking good from the latest USDA World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates. But partially because of that, they're predicting that exports will improve. For Montana, I think we've been hit hard, but relative to the rest of the US agricultural economy, we are relatively lucky. So I say relatively pretty strongly. We're still impacted. Pulse prices are flat to down. That's sort of been the case for a while now, but cattle markets have really seen the largest effects here. So to respond to that, there have been a number of COVID stimulus packages. So there's many pieces to this. George and Joel will talk about this in coming weeks. And what I'll be talking about today is the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. There'll probably be more programs likely to come. Congress is currently debating. So today is August 28th. Things could change by the time you hear this video for sure. So cfap. The deadline to sign up is currently September 11th, 2020. I'm just going to give the very basics here with an idea that you can go to the farmers.gov/cfap website and get all of this information there. The idea was that it was designed to help producers of crops and livestock that were affected by coronavirus market disruptions and some of the steep price declines that we saw. So price had to decline for the majority of things by over 5%. A number of major Montana commodities were included. Cattle is again the big one, and you can see some of the payout rates for cattle in the chart to the right. So pretty large payouts, although from talking to people, they're not, of course, what we would like to see as cattle producers. Malt barley is also covered. Durum wheat, hard red spring wheat are covered. Canola is covered, and potatoes are have been increasingly covered, although again, not to the extent that I think potato producers here would like to see. The other thing that has been recently added is sheep. So previously, younger designations, so lambs and yearlings, as well as wool, were covered. Now older sheep are covered as well. So cfap, the payments are based for non-specialty crops on the smaller of 50% of 2019 production or unpriced inventory as of January 15th of this year. Livestock payments are based on a combination of actual sales between mid-January and mid-April and the highest owned inventory on a date that you as the producer select between mid-April and mid-May. A number of Montana commodities are not included. Those include bison, which might be relevant to folks on Fort Peck, winter wheat, feed barley, and sugar beets. I mentioned the sheep have recently been added. Some other commodities have been added as well. There's a lot of specialty crop items that we don't so much grow here. This is what payments look like at this point. I got this from FSA last week. So this is as of, I believe, August 17th. The big payout is for livestock with over 7,700 applications and over 145 million in payouts, and that's over 90% of the payments that have been made so far. So with that, I will open it up to any questions. What I've got up here is just the fall series schedule and a reminder to let us know if you have topics that you'd like to hear. And then I'm gonna bring Wendy Becker on. So Wendy, if you could unmute yourself.
Yep.
I know you had a couple questions, and I have a couple questions for you. So why don't you go first?
I guess I was going to ask is that they to go through the FPCC. That's some questions that I had. Or don't know where to go, or if they know anything about the program, or they've never had any do with the FSA office. They go there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Or rather call your FSA office. And let's see, if you just Google, I thought I had the web address, but I just have instructions to Google your USDA Service Center locator, and that will link you up to your local FSA office.
Don't have a relationship, then you just have just that where you have farm and then process.
Yeah,
Do they know,
absolutely.
do you know how many applications they've come out with already? How many they're expecting more?
So from talking to FSA, they think that the majority of applications are probably in, although they don't know that for sure. So far, it looks like, oops, a total of a little under 10,000 applications.
Okay.
And then moving forward, there could be a substantial amount more because the deadline is open till September 11th.
Yeah, and that changed, didn't it? Wasn't it sometime in August 1st?
Yeah, absolutely. So the deadline was today, August 28th, and now it is September 11th. So still time to be able to get in there.
Is there any sign that they may extend it even more?
I have not heard that. I know there are a couple FSA people on the phone, so if you guys want to chime in, feel free to do so.
We're not anticipating an extension at this time. There may be another cfap program implemented later this year or early next year.
Great. So I guess, Wendy, I also wanted to ask you, because you're someone that's actually gone through the process. Was it easy?
Well, yeah, for me, it was easy just because I have an established relationship number with the FSA office. And so, and of course, right now you have to make appointments to go in there and close to the public, and they will meet with you. But yeah, we just get the information that they asked, and then those two. It's just understanding the two payments of the one where it's the marketing year or time frame that they put on there, and if you had sold any in that time frame, which I hadn't. So I wasn't even looking at that column, and that was the second column that they told me that is where my animals would fall into, just because of the inventory of having what I have, and after calving as well. And I will also say that hogs are in there, and the only reason I say hogs is because we had a few hogs here, and a few people have them around the area, and that is one of the things that was included. Sheep wasn't, but now it is. Hogs are, if you had some during that time frame as well.
I thought I had hogs on this slide, but it looks like I don't. But yeah, that's a really good point. And then I guess, how long did it take for you to receive a payment after you had gone through that process?
Let's see. I think it started early June is when they started gathering some of that information. I called it in, and I think by June, I want to say 10th through the 15th, sometime there is when the first round came out, which was, they told us it was going to be 80% because they weren't sure how much I think available money was going to be with this whole program. However, we were informed a couple weeks ago that the second part of that, the 20%, was also going to be go ahead and given out, and that has already happened. And we didn't have to do anything else with that. It just showed up because we'd already given the information for that, and so it's was already there. That just arrived, I want to say, this week.
Okay, so that took a little bit longer.
Yeah, because we were told, first of all, that we probably weren't getting it, or we didn't think we were going to get it. It was just this 80%. And then I don't know why. I don't know if it was just because that they had still money available. But yeah, all of a sudden the rest of it was available for us. So it's relatively painless. We have been told that because the numbers we give are just a number, they're just an inventory number, and so we were told that to make sure you're relatively accurate on those numbers, because they will come back. They can come back and audit those numbers. So just to make sure that you kind of have that record, or whatever you have, how you put that in.
Yeah.
And that's livestock. That there's also between the wheat and corn and whatever else you had in inventory. And I mean, like,
And we did, this is Carrie, we did the non-specialty, obviously, and I would say the turnaround time on the first payment was within 10 days of submitting the application. And like Wendy, we got an additional payment this week as well. So from the, the non-specialty side.
And Carrie, was the process difficult for you?
Brock did it all,
Okay.
but no, I mean, they don't want, for the production, they don't want your actual production reports, but that's what we worked with. And it was, the spreadsheet was fairly self-explanatory, so.
Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here because these are quick meetings. But if you joined us, thank you very much. Thanks to Reagan from FSA and Liz from FSA, and everyone else who showed up today. Please do, again, let us know if you have suggestions for topics you'd like to see covered in these conversations in the future. And thanks a lot. So I'll stop recording now and say goodbye.